The NFL has been lying to you. For decades, the league has carefully crafted narratives, protected its golden boys, and manipulated outcomes to maximize profit and storylines. What you're about to hear will change how you watch football forever. Some call them conspiracy theories. Others call them patterns too obvious to ignore. Let's start with the most infamous controversy in modern NFL history, one that launched a dynasty and still has fans divided today. The Tuck Rule. January 19th, 2002. AFC Divisional Playoff. The Oakland Raiders were on the verge of ending the Patriots season and Tom Brady's career before it even started. With less than 2 minutes remaining in a blizzard, Brady dropped back, pump faked, and then had the ball stripped by cornerback Charles Woodson. Oakland recovered. Game over, except it wasn't. After a lengthy review, referee Walt Coleman emerged and made one of the most controversial calls in playoff history. He ruled it an incomplete pass, citing the obscure Tuck Rule, which stated that if a quarterback's arm is moving forward in any way, even after a pump fake, it's an incomplete pass, not a fumble. The Patriots kept the ball, kicked a field goal to tie, then won in overtime. They went on to win the Super Bowl, launching the greatest dynasty in NFL history. But here's where conspiracy theorists go wild. The Tuck Rule had been on the books since 1999, but almost nobody knew it existed. It had rarely been called, and even referees struggled to explain it. Some believe the rule was specifically created or selectively enforced to protect quarterbacks, especially star quarterbacks who drive ratings and revenue. And the timing couldn't have been more suspicious. This was the first year of the Patriots dynasty under a relatively unknown second-string quarterback. The league needed new stars after years of dominance by a few teams. Brady and the Patriots provided the perfect underdog story that turned into a dynasty. Critics point out that the rule was conveniently eliminated in 2013, more than a decade later, as if the league no longer needed it once Brady was established. Why keep an obscure, confusing rule on the books for so long unless it served a specific purpose? To this day, Raiders fans insist the call was fixed to create a new NFL dynasty. The league claims it was simply following the rulebook, but the question remains, why was such an obscure rule applied at such a critical moment, and why did it take over a decade to remove it? Speaking of the Patriots, their success has spawned more conspiracy theories than perhaps any franchise in sports history. And the most explosive might be Spygate. In September 2007, the New England Patriots were caught red-handed videotaping the New York Jets' defensive signals from an unauthorized location on the sideline. The league acted swiftly. Commissioner Roger Goodell fined head coach Bill Belichick $500,000, the largest fine ever for a coach, and stripped the team of a first-round draft pick. But here's where it gets dark. According to reports, the Patriots had been doing this for years, possibly dating back to their first Super Bowl run in 2001. Former players and coaches from other teams claimed New England always seemed to know what was coming. The St. Louis Rams, who lost to the Patriots in Super Bowl 36, have long suspected that New England had inside information about their game plan. Some reports alleged that the Patriots videotaped the Rams' walk-through practice the day before the game, giving them a blueprint for the biggest upset in Super Bowl history. The league investigated, but found no evidence of a walk-through tape. However, and this is crucial, Goodell ordered all the Spygate tapes destroyed. Why? If the Patriots were simply bending the rules in one game against the Jets, why destroy all the evidence? What else was on those tapes? Conspiracy theorists believe the NFL buried the full extent of Spygate to protect the integrity of 3 Super Bowl championships. If it came out that the Patriots had been systematically cheating for years, it would delegitimize one of the league's most marketable dynasties and raise questions about every game they won. The destruction of evidence suggests a cover-up, not transparency. Bill Belichick has never fully addressed what was on those tapes, and the NFL has refused to release details. To this day, Fans wonder how deep the cheating really went and whether the league protected the Patriots to preserve its own image. But the Patriots' controversies didn't end with Spygate. Just a few years ago, they were at the center of another scandal that divided the football world: Deflategate. In January 2015, the Patriots destroyed the Indianapolis Colts 45-7 in the AFC Championship game. But the story wasn't the blowout. It was the footballs. After the game, reports emerged that 11 of the 12 footballs used by the Patriots in the first half were underinflated, below the NFL's required PSI range. Underinflated balls are easier to grip, especially in cold, wet conditions. The NFL launched an investigation led by attorney Ted Wells, and the findings were damning, sort of. The Wells report concluded that it was more probable than not that Patriots personnel deliberately deflated the footballs, and that Tom Brady was generally aware of it. Brady was suspended for 4 games, the team was fined $1 million, and they lost 2 draft picks. But here's where the conspiracy theories explode in both directions. On one side, many believe Deflategate was a witch hunt. Scientists, including professors from MIT and several universities, pointed out that the ideal gas law naturally causes footballs to lose pressure in cold weather. The game was played in freezing temperatures, and basic physics could explain the deflation without any tampering. The NFL's own testing procedures were inconsistent, with different gauges giving different readings. Some see Deflategate as Roger Goodell's vendetta against the Patriots, a way to reassert his authority after being criticized for being too lenient during Spygate. The Patriots had embarrassed the league multiple times, and this was Goodell's chance to take them down. On the other side, skeptics point out that only the Patriots' footballs were deflated, not the Colts. If weather was the only factor, both teams' balls should have lost pressure equally. Plus, text messages between Patriots equipment staff referenced deflating balls and included jokes about Brady's preferences. One staffer even called himself the Deflator. Whether you believe it was a setup or a legitimate scandal, one thing is certain. The NFL's handling of Deflategate was a disaster that cost the league millions in legal fees and made the controversy far bigger than it needed to be. And it made people wonder, what else is the league hiding? Let's shift to one of the most controversial moments in recent playoff history, a moment so blatant that it sparked rule changes and national outrage. The 2018 NFC Championship no call. January 20th, 2019. The New Orleans Saints were hosting the Los Angeles Rams with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. Late in the fourth quarter, with the Saints driving and the game tied, quarterback Drew Brees threw a pass to receiver Tommy Lee Lewis. Before the ball arrived, Rams cornerback nickel Roby Coleman absolutely demolished Lewis with a helmet-to-helmet hit, a clear pass interference penalty, and a clear helmet-to-helmet penalty. Except no flag was thrown. The refs, standing just feet away, didn't call anything. The Saints had to settle for a field goal. The Rams tied it up, and Los Angeles won in overtime. The Rams were headed to the Super Bowl in their new Los Angeles home, the league's grand return to the LA market. And that's where the conspiracy theory begins. The NFL had just moved the Rams back to Los Angeles in 2016, investing billions into a new stadium and trying to recapture a massive market. A Super Bowl appearance in year 3 of the LA experiment would be a marketing goldmine, validating the move and generating massive revenue. Meanwhile, the Saints making another Super Bowl wouldn't have the same storyline impact. Some believe the no call wasn't incompetence. It was intentional. The officials were instructed, either explicitly or implicitly, to let the Rams have a chance. The refs knew that calling pass interference there would likely end the game and send the Saints to the Super Bowl, derailing the NFL's LA narrative. After the game, even Roby Coleman admitted he got away with one, saying he interfered and was surprised no flag came out. The backlash was so intense that the NFL implemented a new pass interference review rule the following season, though it was poorly executed and eventually abandoned. The league issued a weak apology to the Saints, but the damage was done. Saints fans still believe they were robbed of a Super Bowl appearance to serve the NFL's business interests. The timing, the location, the stakes, it all felt too convenient. But the question remains, was it the worst missed call in NFL history, or was it something more sinister? Now let's go back in time to one of the coldest and most legendary games ever played. A game that some believe was sabotaged before kickoff. The Ice Bowl, December 31st, 1967. The Green Bay Packers hosted the Dallas Cowboys in the NFL Championship game. The temperature at kickoff was 13 degrees below zero, with a wind chill of 48 below. It remains the coldest game in NFL history. But here's the thing. It didn't have to be that cold, at least not on the field. Lambeau Field had just installed a state-of-the-art underground heating system designed to keep the field playable in brutal Wisconsin winters. The system used electric coils buried beneath the turf to prevent the ground from freezing. It was a technological marvel, and it should have worked. Except on game day, it didn't. The heating system mysteriously failed the night before the game, and the field turned into a sheet of ice. Players slipped and struggled to gain traction, and the game became a brutal war of attrition. The Packers, used to the cold, adapted better than the Cowboys, who were completely unprepared. Green Bay won 21-17 on Bart Starr's iconic quarterback sneak in the final seconds. But conspiracy theorists believe the heating system didn't fail by accident. They think the Packers intentionally turned it off to give themselves a competitive advantage. Green Bay was a cold-weather team built for brutal conditions, while Dallas was a finesse team from Texas that relied on speed and precision. Freezing the field neutralized the Cowboys' strengths and turned the game into a slugfest that favored the Packers. The official explanation is that the heating system malfunctioned because moisture from the field got trapped under a tarp, which then froze when the heat turned on, creating an ice layer. But skeptics find it awfully convenient that a brand new, expensive system failed at the most critical moment in the most important game of the season. To this day, some Cowboys fans believe they were cheated out of a championship by Vince Lombardi and the Packers, who manipulated the conditions to ensure victory. The Packers maintain it was a genuine malfunction, but the questions have never fully gone away. Let's talk about a conspiracy theory that doesn't involve a single game, but rather decades of systemic bias. The theory that the NFL protects its star quarterbacks at all costs, changing rules and enforcing penalties to keep its most marketable players on the field. It's no secret that the NFL is a quarterback-driven league. Star quarterbacks sell jerseys, drive ratings, and create dynasties that casual fans can follow. But over the past 2 decades, rule changes have increasingly favored quarterbacks, to the point where some believe the game is rigged in their favor. Consider the evolution of roughing the passer penalties. In the 1970s and 80s, quarterbacks were fair game. Defenders could hit them high, low, late, it didn't matter. But starting in the early 2000s, the rules began to change. Hits to the head became illegal. Hits below the knees became illegal. Landing with your full body weight on a quarterback became illegal. Defenders now have to tackle quarterbacks in an almost impossible way, leading to countless controversial flags that extend drives and change games. The most infamous example came in 2018 when Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers suffered a collarbone injury, and shortly afterward, the NFL instituted the bodyweight rule, which penalized defenders for landing on quarterbacks even during legal tackles. That same season, Clay Matthews of the Rams was flagged multiple times for routine sacks, sparking outrage and mockery across the league. Conspiracy theorists believe these rules aren't about player safety. They're about protecting investments. Star quarterbacks like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and Peyton Manning are worth hundreds of millions in revenue. If they get injured, ratings drop, merchandise sales plummet, and storylines collapse. The NFL can't afford to lose its biggest stars, so it legislates their protection. Critics point out that running backs, who take far more punishment, don't receive the same protections. Wide receivers get destroyed over the middle, and linebackers absorb violent collisions on every play. But quarterbacks, they're untouchable. Some even believe referees are instructed to give star quarterbacks favorable calls, especially in crucial moments. How many times have we seen a questionable roughing the passer flag extend a game-winning drive for a marquee quarterback? How often do no-name backups get the same treatment? The answer seems obvious. To this day, the debate rages. Are these rule changes genuinely about safety, or are they about protecting the NFL's most valuable assets at the expense of competitive integrity? Speaking of controversial rule changes, let's talk about one of the most infamous catches that wasn't a catch in NFL history, and the conspiracy theory that the rule was created just to screw over one team, the Calvin Johnson rule. It was 2010, and Detroit Lions receiver Calvin Johnson, one of the most physically dominant players in NFL history, made what everyone thought was a game-winning touchdown catch against the Chicago Bears. Johnson caught the ball in the end zone, got both feet down, and then as he rolled to the ground, the ball came loose when he used it to brace his fall. The refs ruled it incomplete, citing a rule that required a receiver to maintain possession through the entire process of the catch, even after hitting the ground. The Lions lost the game, and fans were furious. But here's where the conspiracy theory kicks in. That rule, later dubbed the Calvin Johnson rule, seemed to be enforced inconsistently and almost always against the Lions. Over the next several years, Detroit was on the wrong end of multiple controversial no-catch calls, including a playoff game against Dallas in 2014 when Dez Bryant made a similar catch that was also overturned. The rule was so confusing that even referees, analysts, and players couldn't agree on what constituted a catch. Some believe the NFL used the rule as a tool to manipulate outcomes, especially against small market teams like Detroit that didn't have the national appeal of franchises like Dallas, New England, or Green Bay. The Lions have one of the longest championship droughts in sports, and many Detroit fans believe the league actively works against them because a winning Lions team doesn't move the needle for ratings or revenue. The NFL finally eliminated the rule in 2018, simplifying the catch definition, but the damage was done. For years, the Calvin Johnson rule cost teams wins, playoff berths, and possibly even championships. And Lions fans will never forget that it all started with a call that robbed them of a victory against their division rivals. Was it incompetence, or was it something more deliberate? Let's dive into one of the most bizarre and talked about conspiracy theories in NFL history, one that involves a former MVP, his wife, and a shipment of performance-enhancing drugs, the Peyton Manning HGH scandal. In December 2015, Al Jazeera released a documentary called The Dark Side, which alleged that several high-profile athletes, including Peyton Manning, had used performance-enhancing drugs. According to the report, human growth hormone was shipped to Manning's home in 2011 under his wife Ashley's name during the year Manning missed due to multiple neck surgeries. The implication was clear. Manning used HGH to recover from injury, and his wife's name was used to cover it up. Manning vehemently denied the allegations, calling the report garbage and threatening legal action. The NFL launched an investigation and ultimately cleared Manning of any wrongdoing, finding no credible evidence that he used HGH. Case closed, right? Not according to conspiracy theorists. Critics point out several suspicious details. First, why was HGH being shipped to Manning's house at all, even under his wife's name? Manning claimed his wife used it for anti-aging purposes, but the timing, right in the middle of his injury rehab, seemed too convenient. Second, the source of the story, a pharmacist named Charlie Sly, recanted his claims, saying he made it all up. But some believe Sly was pressured to retract his story to protect Manning and the NFL. Third, and most damning, the NFL's investigation was criticized for lacking thoroughness. Manning was never interviewed under oath. and Ashley Manning was never required to provide medical records proving she used the HGH. The league seemed eager to clear Manning and move on, rather than conduct a genuine investigation. Some believe the NFL protected Manning because he was one of the league's most marketable stars and a future Hall of Famer. A PED scandal would tarnish his legacy, hurt the league's image, and raise uncomfortable questions about how many other players used HGH to recover from injuries. Manning retired after the 2015 season, winning his second Super Bowl and riding off into the sunset as one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. But the questions never went away. Was the HGH scandal a baseless accusation, or did the NFL bury the truth to protect one of its golden boys? Now let's talk about one of the most controversial plays in playoff history, a play that still divides fans and analysts to this day. The Dez Bryant non-catch, January 11th, 2015, divisional playoff. The Dallas Cowboys were visiting the Green Bay Packers in a game that would decide who went to the NFC Championship. Late in the fourth quarter, with Dallas trailing by 5 points, quarterback Tony Romo threw a deep ball down the sideline to star receiver Dez Bryant. Bryant leaped, caught the ball, took several steps, then lunged toward the goal line. As he hit the ground, the ball came loose briefly before he regained control. The refs initially ruled it a catch, but after a review, they overturned the call, saying Bryant didn't complete the process of the catch. The Cowboys lost, and Dallas fans exploded in outrage. The call seemed absurd. Bryant caught the ball, took multiple steps, and made a football move by lunging for the end zone. By any common sense definition, it was a catch. But the NFL's convoluted catch rule said otherwise. Here's where the conspiracy theory starts. Some believe the call was made to protect the Packers, one of the league's most storied and profitable franchises, and to keep Aaron Rodgers, one of the NFL's biggest stars, in the playoffs. A Cowboys win would have eliminated Green Bay and drastically changed the playoff picture. The NFL had a vested interest in keeping Rodgers alive in the postseason for ratings purposes. Others point out that Dallas, despite being a massive market, had been mediocre for years, and the league didn't need them to succeed. Meanwhile, the Packers were a model franchise with a national fan base. Critics of the call also note that the same rule was enforced inconsistently throughout the season. Other receivers made similar catches that were ruled complete, but when it mattered most, in a playoff game, the refs took the catch away from Dez. The controversy was so intense that the NFL eventually changed the catch rule, making it simpler and more intuitive. But for Cowboys fans, the damage was done. That call cost them a legitimate shot at the Super Bowl, and many believe it wasn't an accident. Let's go even further back to one of the most legendary plays in NFL history, a play that some believe never should have counted. The Music City Miracle, January 8th, 2000, AFC wildcard playoff. The Tennessee Titans were hosting the Buffalo Bills in a game that came down to the final seconds. With 16 seconds left and the Bills leading 16-15, the Titans returned a kickoff 75 yards for a touchdown on a play involving a lateral from tight end Frank Wycheck to receiver Kevin Dyson. Dyson took the lateral and raced down the sideline for the game-winning score. But was it actually a lateral, or was it a forward pass, which would have been illegal? Replays showed that the ball traveled sideways or slightly forward, depending on the angle. Bills fans and analysts argued that it was clearly a forward pass, and the touchdown should have been nullified. The refs reviewed the play and let the touchdown stand, and the Titans went on to make a Cinderella run to the Super Bowl. Conspiracy theorists believe the refs got the call wrong, either through incompetence or because the NFL wanted the underdog Titans story to continue. Tennessee making the Super Bowl as a wild-card team was a compelling narrative, especially compared to the Bills, who had already been to 4 straight Super Bowls in the early 90s and lost all of them. A Bills return to the Super Bowl wouldn't have generated the same excitement. Some even suggest the refs were hesitant to overturn such a dramatic game-deciding play because it would have robbed fans of an iconic moment. The Music City Miracle became one of the most famous plays in NFL history, and taking it away would have been a PR nightmare for the league. To this day, Bills fans insist the lateral was forward and that they were robbed of a playoff win. The league maintains the call was correct, but the controversy has never fully died. Was it a miracle, or was it a mistake that the NFL refused to admit? Let's shift gears to a conspiracy theory involving the NFL draft and the belief that the league manipulates the order to benefit certain teams and storylines. The draft lottery conspiracy. Unlike the NBA, which uses a lottery system for the draft, the NFL awards picks based strictly on record. The worst teams get the highest picks, in theory giving them the best chance to rebuild. But conspiracy theorists believe the league still finds ways to manipulate the draft to create favorable outcomes. One of the most talked about examples is the 2012 draft, when the Indianapolis Colts had the first overall pick and selected Andrew Luck, widely considered a generational quarterback prospect. The Colts had gone 2-14 the previous season, their worst record in decades, and it just happened to come the year after Peyton Manning missed the entire season due to injury and was released by the team. Some believe the Colts intentionally tanked that season to secure the number 1 pick and land Luck. The phrase "suck for luck" became a rallying cry, and critics pointed out that the Colts seemed to give up on winnable games down the stretch. Whether or not the Colts tanked, the outcome was perfect for the NFL. Indianapolis, one of the league's most stable and popular franchises, got a franchise quarterback to replace a legend, keeping them relevant and profitable. Another example is the 2020 draft, when the Cincinnati Bengals had the first pick and selected Joe Burrow, the Heisman Trophy winner from LSU, who just happened to be from Ohio. The Bengals had gone 2-14, and Burrow's homecoming story was a marketing dream for the league. Some fans of other teams questioned whether the Bengals were truly that bad, or if they shut it down to secure Burrow. The NFL has always denied any manipulation of the draft, and there's no concrete evidence of rigging. But the fact that marquee prospects often end up in major markets or with storied franchises keeps the conspiracy theories alive. Was it luck, or was it by design? Now let's talk about one of the most infamous in-game incidents in recent memory, a moment that sparked outrage and led to one of the biggest officiating controversies in years. The Fail Mary, September 24th, 2012, Monday Night Football. The Seattle Seahawks were hosting the Green Bay Packers, but this wasn't a normal game. The regular referees were locked out due to a labor dispute, and the NFL was using replacement refs, many of whom had little to no experience officiating at a high level. The game came down to the final play. Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson heaved a Hail Mary into the end zone, where Packers safety M.D. Jennings clearly intercepted the ball. Except, Seahawks receiver Golden Tate was also there, and one ref ruled it an interception while another ruled it a touchdown. After a chaotic review, the touchdown call stood, and Seattle won. The football world exploded. It was one of the worst calls in NFL history, and it became the tipping point that forced the league to end the lockout and bring back the regular refs. But conspiracy theorists believe the Fail Mary wasn't just incompetence, it was orchestrated. Some think the NFL intentionally kept the replacement refs in place, knowing they would botch calls to pressure the regular refs to accept a bad deal and return. The league needed a high-profile disaster to justify its position, and the Fail Mary provided exactly that. Within days, the lockout ended and the real refs were back. Others believe the call was made to benefit Seattle, a team the league was trying to build into a contender in a strong media market. The Seahawks had just drafted Russell Wilson and were on the verge of becoming a dominant franchise. A win over the Packers, even a controversial one, kept them in playoff contention and validated their rebuild. To this day, Packers fans believe they were robbed and that the NFL used replacement refs as pawns in a labor negotiation that prioritized money over integrity. But the question remains, was the Fail Mary truly an accident? Or was it part of a larger plan? Let's go back to the 1980s and talk about one of the league's most famous and controversial characters, a man whose off-field behavior was allegedly enabled by the NFL and his team for years. Lawrence Taylor and the cover-up. Lawrence Taylor is widely considered the greatest defensive player in NFL history. A 10-time Pro Bowler, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, and Super Bowl champion, LT revolutionized the linebacker position with his speed, power, and relentless aggression. But off the field, Taylor was a disaster. He battled severe cocaine addiction throughout his career, was arrested multiple times, and admitted to using drugs before games. Despite all this, the NFL and the New York Giants kept him on the field for over a decade. Conspiracy theorists believe the league and the Giants actively covered up Taylor's issues because he was too valuable to lose. LT was the face of the Giants' defense, a player who sold tickets and drove ratings. Losing him would have been catastrophic for both the team and the league, so they looked the other way. Some former players have claimed that the Giants paid off people to keep Taylor's problems quiet, and that the NFL's drug testing policies at the time were intentionally lax to avoid catching star players. Taylor himself has admitted that he often showed up to games high and that the team knew about his addiction but didn't do enough to stop it. Critics argue that if Taylor had been a backup or a less marketable player, he would have been kicked out of the league immediately. But because he was a superstar, he was protected. The NFL's handling of Taylor set a precedent that would continue for decades, where star players received preferential treatment and second, third, and fourth chances that others never got. Today, Taylor's legacy is complicated. He's in the Hall of Fame, but his career raises uncomfortable questions about how the NFL enables destructive behavior when it benefits the bottom line. Now let's talk about one of the most dominant franchises in NFL history, and the theory that their success was built on more than just great coaching and talent. The New England Patriots salary cap manipulation. From 2001 to 2019, the Patriots made 9 Super Bowl appearances and won 6 championships, the greatest dynasty in NFL history. But some believe their success came partly from bending or breaking salary cap rules. The salary cap is designed to create parity, ensuring that no team can simply outspend others to stockpile talent. But the Patriots consistently fielded stacked rosters despite being up against the cap every year. How did they do it? Conspiracy theorists point to several suspicious patterns. First, Tom Brady consistently took below-market contracts, allowing the team to spend more on surrounding talent. While Brady claimed he did it to help the team win, some believe there was an under-the-table agreement between Brady and owner Robert Kraft that would compensate him later, possibly through Brady's TB12 company, which had business dealings with the Patriots. Second, the Patriots were masters of manipulating contract structures, using signing bonuses, incentives, and restructures to create cap space that other teams couldn't replicate. Some believe they exploited loopholes that the league quietly allowed because the Patriots were good for business. Third, star players often took discounts to play in New England, sometimes far below what they could have earned elsewhere. While some attributed this to the winning culture, others wondered if there were side deals or promises being made off the books. The NFL has never found evidence of salary cap violations by the Patriots, but the questions persist. How did they keep so much talent together for so long, while other teams had to break up their rosters after 1 or 2 successful seasons? Was it genius management, or was it something more questionable? To this day, rival fans believe the Patriots cheated the cap and that the league looked the other way because the dynasty was too profitable to tear down. Let's move to one of the most shocking and controversial moments in Super Bowl history, a moment that still has fans debating what really happened. Super Bowl 40, Seahawks versus Steelers. February 5th, 2006. The Seattle Seahawks were making their first Super Bowl appearance against the Pittsburgh Steelers. one of the NFL's most storied franchises. The game was filled with controversial calls that overwhelmingly favored Pittsburgh. Seahawks quarterback Matt Hasselbeck was flagged for an illegal block below the waist after he threw an interception and tried to tackle the defender. Wide receiver Darrell Jackson had a touchdown called back for offensive pass interference on a ticky-tack push-off. And perhaps most egregiously, Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger appeared to be stopped short of the goal line on a quarterback sneak, but the refs ruled it a touchdown despite replays showing the ball never crossed. The Steelers won 21-10, but many believe the refs handed them the game. Conspiracy theorists point out that 2006 was a significant year for the Steelers. The team's legendary owner, Dan Rooney, was beloved across the league, and the franchise was celebrating its legacy. Pittsburgh was also a much bigger market and more marketable team than Seattle, a relatively new franchise without a major national fan base. Some believe the NFL wanted the Steelers to win for the storyline, and that the refs were either consciously or subconsciously biased toward Pittsburgh. Even years later, former NFL officials admitted that some of the calls were questionable, but the results stood. Seahawks fans still refer to Super Bowl 40 as one of the most poorly officiated games in NFL history, and many believe they were robbed of their first championship. Was it incompetence, or was the fix in? Let's discuss one of the most explosive and disturbing scandals in NFL history, one that exposed a culture of violence and bounties that may have extended far beyond one team. Bountygate. In 2012, the NFL revealed that from 2009 to 2011, the New Orleans Saints had operated a bounty program where defensive players were paid cash rewards for injuring opponents. Defensive coordinator Greg Williams ran the program, offering money for knocking players out of games, with bounties as high as $1,500 for a big hit. The league suspended Williams indefinitely, suspended head coach Sean Payton for the entire 2012 season, and handed down punishments to multiple players. The scandal rocked the NFL and raised serious questions about player safety and the culture of the game. But conspiracy theorists believe Bountygate went much deeper than the Saints. Some former players have claimed that bounty programs existed on multiple teams, and that New Orleans was simply the one that got caught. The Saints were made an example of, but they weren't alone. Critics also point out that the NFL's investigation was flawed. The evidence against individual players was largely circumstantial, and the punishments were eventually overturned on appeal. Some believe the league exaggerated the severity of the Saints program to distract from the growing concussion crisis and lawsuits from former players. By making the Saints the villains, the NFL could claim it was serious about player safety without addressing the systemic violence inherent in the sport. Others believe the timing of the scandal was suspicious. The Saints had won the Super Bowl in 2009, one of the most feel-good stories in NFL history after Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans. But by 2012, the team's success was threatening the established order, and the league needed to knock them down a peg. To this day, Saints fans believe their team was unfairly targeted and that other teams got away with the same behavior. The league maintains that the Saints were the only team running a bounty program, but the questions linger. Now let's talk about a conspiracy theory that involves one of the most beloved figures in NFL history and a play call that still baffles fans. Super Bowl 49, Patriots vs. Seahawks. February 1st, 2015. The Seattle Seahawks were on the verge of winning back-to-back Super Bowls, something that hadn't been done in over a decade. With less than a minute remaining, trailing 28-24, the Seahawks had the ball on the Patriots' 1-yard line. Marshawn Lynch, one of the most powerful running backs in the league, stood in the backfield. Everyone expected a handoff to Lynch, who had been nearly unstoppable all game. Instead, offensive coordinator Darrell Bevell called for a pass. Russell Wilson dropped back and threw a slant toward the end zone. Patriots rookie Malcolm Butler jumped the route and intercepted the pass, sealing the win for New England. The play call was immediately called the worst in Super Bowl history. Why pass when you have Marshawn Lynch, a touchdown virtually guaranteed? Conspiracy theorists have offered several explanations. Some believe the Seahawks intentionally threw the game. Russell Wilson, the young face of the franchise, was about to become the highest paid player in NFL history. Ownership wanted Wilson to be the hero, not Lynch. By calling a pass, they tried to give Wilson the glory. When it backfired, it exposed a rift between the team and Lynch, who many believe was intentionally sidelined. Others think the Patriots knew the play was coming. Some speculate that New England had intercepted Seattle's radio communications or signals, allowing them to anticipate the pass. Belichick's defense was perfectly positioned, and Butler seemed to jump the route with unnatural confidence. Still others believe the NFL scripted the outcome. The Patriots winning their fourth Super Bowl and launching another dynasty was a better storyline than the Seahawks repeating. Tom Brady needed redemption after Deflategate, and the league gave it to him. To this day, no one has been able to explain why the Seahawks passed the ball in that situation. Was it a catastrophic coaching mistake, or was it something more deliberate? Let's go back to one of the most violent and tragic incidents in NFL history, and the conspiracy theory that the league covered it up. The Jack Tatum hit on Darryl Stingley. August 12, 1978, preseason game. Oakland Raiders safety Jack Tatum, known as the assassin for his violent hits, collided with New England Patriots receiver Darryl Stingley, fracturing Stingley's vertebrae and leaving him paralyzed for life. The hit was legal under the rules at the time, and Tatum was never penalized or suspended. But conspiracy theorists believe the NFL buried the story to avoid liability and protect the image of the game. Stingley's paralysis was a direct result of the violent culture the NFL promoted, but the league did everything it could to distance itself from responsibility. Tatum never apologized, and the NFL never reached out to help Stingley financially or medically, despite the injury happening during a league-sanctioned game. Critics believe the NFL wanted the incident to disappear because acknowledging it would have opened the door to lawsuits and forced the league to confront the dangerous nature of the sport. Instead, they let Stingley suffer in silence while continuing to market violence as entertainment. The league's handling of the Stingley case set a precedent for how they would deal with catastrophic injuries for decades to come. Deny, minimize, and move on. Some believe that if the NFL had taken responsibility and changed the rules after Stingley's injury, countless other players might have been protected. But that would have cost money and admissions of guilt. So the league chose profit over safety. To this day, the Tatum-Stingley incident remains one of the darkest moments in NFL history and a reminder of what the league was willing to ignore to protect its image. Speaking of the NFL's relationship with violence, let's talk about one of the most explosive scandals in recent memory, one that exposed the league's knowledge of brain injuries decades before they admitted it publicly: the concussion cover-up. For years, the NFL denied any link between football and long-term brain damage. But in the early 2000s, Dr. Bennett Omalu, a forensic pathologist, discovered chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, in the brain of former Steelers center Mike Webster. CTE is a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head trauma, and it had driven Webster to depression, dementia, and eventually homelessness before his death. Omalu published his findings, expecting the NFL to take action. Instead, the league attacked him. The NFL's Mild Traumatic Brain Injury Committee, filled with doctors hand-picked by the league, dismissed Omalu's research and demanded he retract his paper. They claimed there was no evidence linking football to brain damage, despite mounting studies proving otherwise. Conspiracy theorists believe the NFL knew about the dangers of concussions as early as the 1990s, but chose to bury the information to avoid liability. Internal documents later revealed that the league had conducted its own research on brain injuries, but never published the results. Some believe those studies showed the link between football and CTE, but releasing them would have exposed the NFL to billions in lawsuits. The cover-up went on for years, the NFL funded its own biased studies, publicly discredited independent researchers, and downplayed the severity of concussions. It wasn't until 2016, after mounting legal pressure and a class action lawsuit from thousands of former players, that the NFL finally admitted there was a link between football and CTE. But by then, countless players had already suffered irreversible brain damage. Some had committed suicide. Others had descended into dementia and violent behavior. Critics believe the NFL's concussion cover-up is one of the most shameful chapters in sports history. The league prioritized profits over player health, and when the truth finally came out, they tried to settle quietly rather than face full accountability. To this day, families of former players believe the NFL has blood on its hands and that the concussion crisis could have been prevented if the league had been honest from the start. Now let's talk about a conspiracy theory involving one of the most charismatic and controversial owners in NFL history and his alleged relationship with organized crime, Al Davis and the mob. Al Davis was the longtime owner of the Oakland Raiders, a maverick who built one of the most iconic franchises in sports. But throughout his career, rumors swirled about his alleged connections to organized crime. Davis was known for operating in the shadows, making backroom deals, and bending rules to benefit his team. Some believe he had ties to mobsters who helped him gain power and influence within the NFL. One of the most persistent theories is that Davis had connections to gambling operations in Las Vegas, which would explain why the Raiders eventually relocated there. Las Vegas has long been associated with organized crime, and some believe Davis worked with mob figures to secure the move in profit from the gambling boom. Others point to Davis's contentious relationship with other NFL owners. He famously sued the league multiple times, fought Pete Rozelle tooth and nail, and always seemed to know insider information before it became public. Some believe he had informants or connections within the league office that gave him an unfair advantage. There's no concrete evidence linking Davis to organized crime, and the NFL has never investigated the rumors. But the mystique around Davis and the Raiders, combined with their bad boy image, has kept the conspiracy theories alive. Was Al Davis just a genius football mind, or did he have help from people the league didn't want to acknowledge? Let's shift to a more modern controversy, one that involves the league's handling of social justice movements and the blackballing of a player who dared to protest. The Colin Kaepernick collusion case. In 2016, San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick began kneeling during the national anthem to protest police brutality and racial injustice. The gesture sparked a national debate, with some praising his activism and others condemning it as disrespectful to the military and the flag. After the 2016 season, Kaepernick opted out of his contract and became a free agent. Despite being a capable starting quarterback who had led the 49ers to a Super Bowl just a few years earlier, no team signed him. Not as a starter, not as a backup, not even for a tryout. Kaepernick and his supporters believe the NFL colluded to keep him out of the league as punishment for his protests. The theory is that team owners, many of whom are politically conservative and have close ties to law enforcement in military organizations, made a collective decision to blackball Kaepernick to send a message. Kaepernick filed a grievance against the NFL, accusing the league of collusion. The case was settled in 2019 for an undisclosed amount, widely believed to be between $60 and $80 million. The NFL never admitted wrongdoing, but the settlement suggested there was enough evidence to make the league nervous about going to trial. Conspiracy theorists believe the NFL absolutely colluded to keep Kaepernick out. They point to the fact that far less talented quarterbacks were signed during the same period, and that teams that desperately needed quarterback help still refused to even work him out. Some believe the league office, under pressure from owners and sponsors, quietly discouraged teams from signing him. Others think it was more subtle, a gentleman's agreement among owners that signing Kaepernick would bring too much controversy and media attention, so it was easier to just avoid him altogether. The NFL has maintained that teams make independent decisions about their rosters, and that Kaepernick simply wasn't good enough to justify the distraction. But the fact that he settled his collusion case for tens of millions suggests the league knew it had a problem. Was Kaepernick blackballed for his political beliefs, or did teams genuinely move on from him for football reasons? The answer likely depends on who you ask. Now let's talk about one of the most persistent conspiracy theories in NFL history. One that suggests the entire league is scripted like professional wrestling. The NFL is rigged theory. This is the big one. The theory that every game, every play, every outcome is predetermined by the league to maximize drama, ratings, and profit. Believers point to a mountain of circumstantial evidence. Questionable calls that always seem to favor certain teams. Miraculous comebacks that happen at the perfect narrative moment. Injuries to star players that conveniently allow other storylines to develop. The theory goes like this. The NFL is a multi-billion-dollar entertainment business, and like any business, it's designed to make money. The best way to make money is to create compelling storylines that keep fans engaged week after week, year after year. So the league scripts outcomes, or at least nudges them in certain directions, to ensure the most profitable results. For example, why did Tom Brady's Patriots always seem to get favorable calls in crucial moments? Because a Patriots dynasty was good for business. Why did the Saints win the Super Bowl in 2009, just a few years after Hurricane Katrina? Because it was a feel-good story that resonated with casual fans. Why did Peyton Manning win his final Super Bowl in 2016 despite playing terribly all season? Because a fairy tale ending for a legend sells. Believers also point to suspicious officiating patterns. Star quarterbacks get more favorable roughing the passer calls. Big market teams get more primetime games and more national attention. Small market teams like the Bills, Lions, and Browns always seem to fall short in crucial moments. Some even believe players are in on it, that certain athletes are told to underperform or make mistakes at key times to ensure the desired outcome. The counter-argument is obvious. Rigging the NFL would require an impossible level of coordination. You'd need to control referees, players, coaches, and team owners, all while keeping it secret from the media and the public. It's far too complicated to pull off without someone blowing the whistle. But conspiracy theorists have an answer for that too. They say the league doesn't rig every play or every game, just the ones that matter. A crucial penalty here, a missed call there. Subtle nudges that influence outcomes without being obvious. And anyone who speaks out is blackballed or discredited, just like Kaepernick. There's no concrete proof that the NFL is scripted, but the theory refuses to die. Because sometimes the storylines are just too perfect, and the calls are just too convenient, and fans can't help but wonder if what they're watching is competition or entertainment. Let's talk about another conspiracy theory involving one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and the suspicious circumstances surrounding his final Super Bowl victory. Peyton Manning's retirement. February 7th, 2016. Super Bowl 50. The Denver Broncos defeated the Carolina Panthers 24-10, giving Peyton Manning his second championship and a storybook ending to his legendary career. Manning announced his retirement a few weeks later, riding off into the sunset as a champion. But some believe the entire season was orchestrated by the NFL to give Manning a fairy tale finish. Manning had a terrible season in 2015. He threw more interceptions than touchdowns, posted the worst passer rating of his career, and was even benched at one point for backup Brock Osweiler. By all accounts, he was washed up and should have retired before the season even started. But then, in the playoffs, everything changed. Manning's Broncos went on an improbable run, relying on their defense while Manning managed games without turning the ball over. They upset the Patriots in the AFC Championship, then shut down the high-powered Panthers offense in the Super Bowl. The storyline was too perfect. The aging legend, struggling through his final season, summoning one last burst of greatness to win a championship and retire on top. It was the kind of narrative Hollywood writers would create, and conspiracy theorists believe that's exactly what happened. They point to several suspicious elements. The Broncos' defense, one of the best in NFL history, carried the team all year, but Manning still got the credit and the MVP chance. The Patriots, who had dominated Denver in previous matchups, mysteriously couldn't score in the AFC Championship despite having a healthy Tom Brady. And the Panthers, the top seed and heavy favorites, played their worst game of the season in the Super Bowl, committing uncharacteristic turnovers and mental errors. Some believe the NFL wanted Manning to win because his retirement would be a huge media moment, generating months of coverage and nostalgia. The league needed a feel-good story after years of scandals like Deflategate and Bountygate, and Manning provided exactly that. There's no evidence of rigging, and Manning's defenders argue that the Broncos' defense was legitimately dominant enough to carry him to a title. But the timing, the narrative, and the perfect ending have kept the conspiracy theories alive. Was it a genuine Cinderella story, or did the NFL give one of its greatest stars a scripted send-off? Now let's discuss one of the most controversial and longest-running conspiracy theories in sports, one that centers on the league's treatment of certain franchises. The small market bias. For decades, fans of teams like the Cleveland Browns, Detroit Lions, Buffalo Bills, and Jacksonville Jaguars have believed the NFL actively works against them. The theory is simple. Small market teams don't generate the same revenue, ratings, or national interest as big market teams like the Cowboys, Patriots, or 49ers. So the league subtly favors the big markets to maximize profit. Believers point to several patterns. Small market teams always seem to get the worst time slots, stuck with early Sunday games that no one outside their region watches. They rarely get featured in prime time unless they're playing a big market opponent. And when they do make the playoffs, questionable officiating often costs them crucial games. The most cited example is the 2014 wildcard game between the Lions and Cowboys. Detroit was flagged for pass interference, giving them a first down deep in Dallas territory. But the refs picked up the flag without explanation, taking away the penalty and killing the drive. The Cowboys went on to win, and Lions fans believed, once again, that the league screwed them to protect a more marketable team. Another example is the Bills, who made 4 straight Super Bowls in the early 1990s and lost all 4. Some believe the league didn't want a small market team like Buffalo to win a championship, so they ensured the Cowboys and other big market teams came out on top. The NFL denies any bias, arguing that officiating errors happen to all teams equally and that scheduling is based on competitive balance, not market size. But small market fans aren't convinced. They see the Cowboys get primetime game after primetime game despite mediocre records. They see the Patriots dominate for 2 decades while their teams cycle through coaches and quarterbacks with no support from the league. Some even believe the draft is manipulated to keep small market teams bad. High-profile prospects mysteriously fall to big market teams, while small market teams end up with busts and injury-prone players. There's no smoking gun proof of small market bias, but the pattern is hard to ignore. Over the past 30 years, the vast majority of Super Bowl winners have come from large or mid-sized markets. Small market teams like the Bills, Browns, and Lions remain locked in decades-long championship droughts, while teams like the Patriots, Steelers, and Cowboys continue to thrive. Coincidence or conspiracy? Let's talk about one of the most infamous moments in NFL history, and the theory that it was allowed to happen to change the sport forever. The Theismann injury, November 18, 1985, Monday Night Football. Washington Redskins quarterback Joe Theismann dropped back to pass and was sacked by New York Giants linebacker Lawrence Taylor. But this wasn't just any sack. Taylor's hit shattered Theismann's leg so badly that the bone broke through the skin, ending his career instantly. The injury was so gruesome that ABC refused to show replays, and players on both teams were visibly shaken. But conspiracy theorists believe the NFL allowed the hit to happen and used the resulting footage to change the way the game was marketed. In the 1980s, the NFL was in the middle of a ratings boom, fueled in part by the violent, physical nature of the game. Fans loved big hits, and the league leaned into it, promoting players like Lawrence Taylor as assassins who destroyed opponents. The Theismann injury was the culmination of that culture. Some believe the NFL knew players like Taylor were headhunting, and that catastrophic injuries were inevitable. But instead of cracking down, the league let it continue because violence sold. The Theismann hit became one of the most replayed moments in sports history, not because it was a great play, but because it was horrifying. And that horror kept people watching. Critics argue that the NFL could have implemented stricter rules to protect quarterbacks years earlier, but they didn't because injuries like Theismann's generated publicity and kept the sport in the headlines. It wasn't until years later, when lawsuits and public pressure mounted, that the league finally started protecting quarterbacks. To this day, some believe the Theismann injury was allowed to happen as part of the NFL's strategy to market the game as brutal and must-see TV. And it worked. Let's move to another conspiracy theory involving one of the league's most controversial figures and his alleged interference in team operations. Jerry Jones and referee influence. Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, is one of the most powerful and outspoken figures in the NFL. He's also one of the most controversial, with a long history of questionable decisions and public feuds. But some believe Jones's influence extends beyond his own team and that he's used his power to manipulate officiating in favor of the Cowboys. Over the years, the Cowboys have benefited from several highly questionable calls that seem to go their way at crucial moments. The picked-up flag against the Lions in 2014, the Dez Bryant non-catch being overturned despite appearing to be a catch, numerous pass interference calls that extended drives in key games. Some fans believe this isn't coincidence, but rather the result of Jones's behind-the-scenes influence. The theory is that Jones, as one of the most influential owners in the league, has the ability to pressure the league office and officiating crews to favor his team. He's a major revenue driver for the NFL. And keeping the Cowboys competitive keeps ratings and merchandise sales high. So the league gives him subtle advantages through officiating. Critics point out that Jones has publicly feuded with commissioners and other owners, yet the Cowboys always seem to get primetime games and favorable treatment. He's also been involved in league committees that oversee officiating and competition, giving him inside access that other owners don't have. There's no direct evidence that Jones bribes or manipulates refs, but the pattern of favorable calls for Dallas is hard to ignore. And Jones himself has never been shy about wielding his power, openly clashing with league officials when things don't go his way. To this day, fans of rival teams believe the Cowboys get preferential treatment because of Jones's influence, and that the NFL allows it because Dallas is too valuable to let fail. Now let's talk about one of the most tragic and suspicious stories in NFL history, one that involves a star player, a mysterious death, and unanswered questions that linger to this day. Sean Taylor's murder. December 1st, 2007. Washington Redskins safety. Sean Taylor was shot during a home invasion at his Miami area home. He died the next day from his injuries. Taylor was just 24 years old and was in the middle of a Pro Bowl season, establishing himself as one of the best defensive players in the league. The official story is that Taylor was the victim of a botched burglary. 4 men broke into his home looking for cash, and when Taylor confronted them, they shot him. All 4 men were eventually arrested, tried, and convicted. Case closed. But conspiracy theorists believe there's more to the story. Taylor had a complicated past. Before his death, he had been involved in several incidents, including an assault case in 2005 where he was accused of brandishing a gun during a dispute. He had also reportedly received threats in the weeks leading up to his murder. and someone had broken into his home just days earlier, though nothing was stolen. Some believe Taylor was targeted, not by random burglars, but by people connected to his past. There are theories that he owed money, or that he had information about someone powerful, or that the break-in was a warning that he ignored. Others point to the fact that Taylor's girlfriend and young daughter were in the house during the break-in, but they weren't harmed. If it was a random robbery, why did the intruders specifically go after Taylor? The speed with which the police arrested and convicted the four men also raised eyebrows. Some believe the arrests were too clean, too convenient, and that the real story was buried to avoid a deeper investigation into Taylor's connections. There's no concrete evidence of a conspiracy, and the four men convicted of his murder have maintained that it was a robbery gone wrong. But the unanswered questions, the strange circumstances, and the tragic loss of one of the NFL's brightest stars have kept the theories alive. Was Sean Taylor's death a random act of violence, or was there something more sinister at play? Let's talk about one of the most controversial trades in NFL history, and the theory that it was orchestrated by the league to save a franchise: the Herschel Walker trade. October 12, 1989. The Dallas Cowboys traded running back Herschel Walker to the Minnesota Vikings in the largest trade in NFL history. Dallas received 5 players and 8 draft picks, including 3 first-rounders and 3 second-rounders. The trade was a disaster for Minnesota. Walker underperformed, and the Vikings gave up a massive haul of picks that the Cowboys used to build a dynasty. Dallas selected future Hall of Famers Emmitt Smith, Darren Woodson, and others with the picks, winning 3 Super Bowls in the 1990s. But conspiracy theorists believe the trade wasn't just a bad decision by the Vikings. They think the NFL orchestrated it to save the Cowboys, who were in financial trouble and hadn't been competitive in years. The league needed the Cowboys to be good because they were one of the most valuable franchises, and keeping Dallas relevant was good for business. Some believe the Vikings were pressured or incentivized by the league to make the trade, giving the Cowboys the assets they needed to rebuild. Others think the league office helped Dallas identify which players and picks to target, essentially giving them insider information. There's no proof of league involvement, and the trade is generally attributed to Cowboys executive Jerry Jones making a brilliant deal, while Vikings GM Mike Lynn got greedy and overvalued Walker. But the fact that the trade so perfectly set up Dallas's dynasty at the expense of a small market team like Minnesota has kept the conspiracy theories alive. Was it a stroke of genius, or did the NFL help the Cowboys become America's team once again? Let's talk about one of the most bizarre and unexplained incidents in NFL history, one that involved a missing person, a cult, and allegations of murder: the mysterious disappearance of NFL equipment managers. Over the years, several NFL equipment managers and team employees have disappeared under strange circumstances, leading to conspiracy theories about what really happened to them. One of the most famous cases involved a Colts equipment manager in the 1990s who vanished without a trace after a team event. His car was found abandoned, and there were no signs of foul play, but he was never seen again. Some believe he stumbled onto something he wasn't supposed to see, possibly related to gambling or drug use within the organization, and was silenced. Others think he simply walked away from his life and started over somewhere else. Another case involved a Browns employee who disappeared in the 2000s under similar circumstances. He left work one day and never came back, and despite an extensive search, no evidence of what happened to him was ever found. Conspiracy theorists believe these disappearances are connected, and that there's a pattern of team employees who know too much being quietly eliminated or paid off to disappear. The NFL has never publicly addressed these cases, and local authorities have treated them as missing persons cases with no evidence of foul play. But the lack of answers has fueled speculation that something sinister is happening behind the scenes. To this day, the families of these missing employees believe there's more to the story, and that the truth has been buried to protect the league and its teams. Now let's talk about one of the most controversial coaching decisions in recent memory: and the theory that it was made to tank a season deliberately. The Colts tanking for Andrew Luck. In 2011, the Indianapolis Colts went 2-14, their worst season in decades. It just happened to come the year after Peyton Manning missed the entire season due to a serious neck injury. Manning, who had carried the franchise for over a decade, was released after the season, and the Colts used the number 1 pick to select Andrew Luck, the most hyped quarterback prospect since Manning himself. But some believe the Colts deliberately lost games to ensure they got the top pick. The phrase "suck for luck" became a rallying cry, and critics pointed out that the Colts seemed to give up on winnable games down the stretch. Interim head coach Jim Caldwell was criticized for his play calling, and there were reports that players were frustrated with the team's lack of effort. Conspiracy theorists believe the Colts front office made the decision to tank early in the season, once it became clear Manning wouldn't return. Losing every game and securing Luck was more valuable than winning a few meaningless games and ending up with a mid-round pick. The team shut down veteran players, played inexperienced backups, and made baffling strategic decisions that seemed designed to lose. The NFL investigated the allegations, but found no evidence of tanking. The Colts maintained that they were simply a bad team without Manning, and that Luck's arrival was a fortunate coincidence. But fans of other teams weren't convinced, especially those whose teams narrowly missed out on the number 1 pick. To this day, the 2011 Colts season is cited as one of the most obvious examples of tanking in NFL history, even though it was never officially proven. And the fact that the Colts went from worst to first in Luck's rookie year, making the playoffs immediately, only added fuel to the fire. Whether you believe these conspiracy theories or think they're all nonsense, one thing is certain. The NFL has given us plenty of reasons to question what we see on Sundays. From controversial calls to suspicious patterns to unexplained incidents, the league's history is filled with moments that make you wonder if there's more going on behind the scenes than we're being told. What conspiracy theories do you believe? Let me know in the comments.